Call to order the April 24th hybrid regular public meeting of the Highland Park Board of Education. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, here we go again. Before I shout. New York, take two. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and attend the meetings of public bodies in which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting, setting forth the time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger, and posted on the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of this meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the board adjourns for the evening. We have a roll call.
Ms. Cassandra?
Here.
Ms. Coleman? Ms. Gowan? Here. Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola? Ms. Bruce?
Here.
Mr. Roslevich? Ms. Voorhees? Here. Mr. Woodward?
Here.
Okay, I'd like to move that we recess to executive session.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
What is doing after the mic?
Be resolved pursuant to the Sunshine Act, NJSA 10:4-12 and 13. The Highland Park Board of Education will now meet in a closed session to discuss matters related to residency, PIB, student discipline, and a legal matter. These exemptions are permitted to be discussed in closed session in accordance with NJSA 10:4-13. The information regarding the board's closed session discussion will be disclosed to the public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. So now I should move that we recess to executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I move that we reconvene to regular session. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're back. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We had 12 communications this month, just kind of grouping them. There were 3 about our after-school program, another 5 about the youth safety specialist position, 3 about busing and start times, and 1 about the holiday of Eid and our calendar. So thank you to the public for those communications. And we're going to move to approval of our minutes. We're looking to approve the minutes of the hybrid public regular and executive session meetings of March 13, and the hybrid public regular and executive session meetings on March 20th. So I guess I make a motion that we approve those minutes.
Second.
Ms. Cassandra?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
She's not.
Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich?
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Okay, and then we go to our student representative reports.
So for Irving Book Fair, this Wednesday will be from 4:30 to 6:30 at the Media Center, and their Spring Fling Dance was on March 30th. For Bartle, the Earth Day Fair is next Sunday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on North 3rd Ave from Raritan to Denson. The High School Drama Club will be doing a Newsies teaser at Bartle this Friday, and the NJSLA testing begins with ELA next Tuesday. Next week. And Teacher Appreciation Week is the week of May 8th.
At the middle school, the Earth Day Fair is on Sunday, May 7th from 11 to 3 on North 3rd Avenue from Raritan to Denison. The 7th grade field trip is next Tuesday, April 26th, this Tuesday, to Sterling Mines. The spring musical is coming up on May 5th and 6th at 7 p.m. and May 7th at 5 p.m. in the high school auditorium. The NJSLA science testing begins on May 2nd. All of the information for testing will be sent this week. 8th grade parents, please keep in mind that the behavioral and academic requirements sent out to the 8th grade trip apply to all of the 8th grade events, including the dance. And if your child is participating in the Take Your Child to Work Day, please call the main office or email Ms. Santiago, the attendance secretary at msantiago@hpschools.net.
For the high school on April 5th, the high school concluded its Spring Spirit Week with one of the best pep rallies ever. The Spirit Week included things like bring your supplies in, anything but a backpack day, and students used everything, including the kitchen sink, to commemorate the day. We also included a food drive contest that led to a big donation to the county food banks. The pep rally ended up in the gym due to the rain. The tic-tac-toe relay and the rock, paper, scissors race was incredibly intense. Great spirit was shown by all the students, but at the end, the seniors prevailed overall. This past Friday, April 21st, the Guidance Department and Teen Center collaborated to hold a career fair. The day began with an assembly by junior achievement that reviewed personality types and how they match up to certain careers. It also showcased the job outlook and NJ for prospective career fields. Each grade level then visited the gym, which had 15 different vendors who spoke about their careers or ways to secure our futures. Thanks to our guidance interns for organizing the day. The high school will be conducting its first graduation and reunification drill on April 6th with the assistance of the Highland Park Police, and on April 26th with the assistance of the Highland Park Police and Transfiguration of our Lord Church. The high school administration is very grateful for the assistance of Brian O'Mara and Father Abraham to make this important crisis drill possible. We look forward to its success. Also on April 26th in the cafeteria, there will be a parent-teacher student organization membership meeting to plan for the end of the year student celebration. All parents and guardians are invited.
And we have more. On May 5th and 6th at 7 p.m. and May 7th at 5 p.m. in the Robert Stevens Auditorium, our drama club will be presenting Newsies. Please purchase tickets and come out to support our thespians in this fantastic production. On May 8th through May 12th, we look forward to celebrating our teachers during Teacher Appreciation Week. Students are encouraged to let their teachers know how thankful they are for all that they do. Please continue to keep hope alive and persevere for your teachers, owls. Testing is upon us during the month of May. Advanced placement exams will be administered in person using paper-based testing to our students as scheduled from May 1st through the 12th. Students taking AP exams will be excused from participation in classroom sessions and will be allowed to hand in any work due on an exam day late without penalty, especially if the student is preparing for multiple exams on consecutive days. Specific information regarding exam requirements, the date for specific exams, and signing in and out procedures have already been shared by Ms. Hayes, our AP coordinator, and individual AP teachers. May 15th through May 25th, 9, 10, and 11th grade students will be taking the NJSLA. 9th grade students will take ELA 9 assessment. 9th and 10th grade students will take the Algebra 1 or Geometry assessment, depending on what they are enrolled in. And students in Algebra 2 and above are not assessed. 11th grade students will be taking the NJSLA Science assessment. And finally, on May 25th at 7 p.m., the junior prom will be held in the high school dining hall. All our juniors and their dates attending will be dressed formally and will enjoy a wonderful buffet meal donated by their parents. Proceeds from this evening are used to offset the cost for their senior prom next year. For more information, please see Mr. Broadwood.
Thank you. It's kind of encouraging to hear you talking about the end of the year. A little scary, but a lot going on, and the end is in sight. Any questions or comments for Mr. Rex?
Just a quick comment, yes, I can hear the excitement in your voices. You're in the end, you got this. Thank you.
Now, I'll ask you a question, actually. For the assessments, how much time do those take? And how are they done now? I think there's a paper option and a computer option. Do you know?
So I know that some exams, I think for the NJSLA specifically, those are online, but for AP exams, those are mostly on paper unless there is a speaking and listening portion to it, in which case it would be online, on Chromebooks.
How about the NJLSA exams? How many hours do those take for the students?
Typically those are, they only take up like 2 to 3 days before the school days, and they only take up the mornings. It's not a full day exam.
Yes?
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the superintendent's report, which has a student spotlight, so we're looking forward to hearing.
Thank you. I also want to come and thank you for the wonderful report. I did see pictures of the everything but the kitchen sink to bring in. I think somebody actually brought a kitchen sink.
Yeah.
Yes, there was that, a laundry hamper. There was a lot of interesting canoe. Yeah, well, I think they had the kayak or something like that. They had to leave in the main off. That was hard to get through the door. So it was very, very fun. Lots of fun spirit. I also wanted to thank everybody who came out on Saturday for the pie bake-off. My pie did not win. But that's okay. It was delicious. And Rhea, I just wanted to say that you played amazing flute. And for those that were there to hear the music at the end, it was incredible. So thank you for a wonderful evening. I have two things. First, I'd like to turn over the mic to Ms. Brady, who is with us at home with the student spotlight. And then I have something to add before we move on.
Is there a problem online that we can't be heard?
Yeah, Zoom people can't hear on Zoom.
Okay, so remember you have to speak really, really well into the microphone. Like really into the microphone. Real close, real close. Okay, okay, real close. Okay, so I'm going to turn over the microphone to Ms. Brady. I do have a certificate, Ms. Brady, so I'll drop this off in your office on my way out to the middle school. Okay, and please, the floor is all yours.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, good. And most importantly, Michael. I just want to make sure Michael can hear me. So it is my absolute pleasure to be speaking about Michael this evening. I have wonderful things from all his teachers, and then I'll add a little bit myself because I get to see Michael every single day. And really, there's no one more deserving of this award. So let me start with your teachers, Michael, because you'll get a big kick out of everything that they have to say. So Ms. Nunatov started by saying Michael was an awesome classroom manager. He's a natural leader and has the respect of his peers. Mr. DeSegli, Michael's English teacher, said Michael has natural leadership qualities and never hesitates to ask for help. He also is one of the first students to jump into action and help others in need. He works extremely hard and takes pride in his student council duties. He's a joy to have in the classroom. Ms. Lennon says Michael is a very kind student who is always willing to help his peers with the concepts we were working on in math. He is responsible, respectful, and a positive role model in our classroom. It's very impressive to see how hard Michael works, and I am very proud of him. Ms. Maroon, one of Michael's science teachers, said Michael was a kind student who was always willing to participate in class discussions. He would use feedback to improve his work, and that is a quality that really stands out. Mr. Carter, another science teacher, says Michael is very kind and respectful. He always greets me anytime we see each other in the hallway. He's very committed to his student council responsibilities. Ms. Washington says Michael has been an amazing student all year long. He's an active participant, respectful, and caring. Michael is a positive contributor not only to his grade, but to our whole school community. Mr. Farmer said Michael is very friendly with his peers in the classroom. He's respectful all the time. He actively participates in the classroom. Mr. Lubianco said Michael is always respectful in conversation. He has a maturity about him that is not often seen in a student his age. He will often ask how you're doing. He seems genuinely concerned about those around him. He always strives to do his best academically. Now, Ms. Gloff and Ms. Ailey, they are in charge of student council, and I know that you guys heard that Michael's a huge participant in this, so I loved both of their responses. So Ms. Gloff said, star students, those are the words to best describe Michael. He is a Student Congress and Students in Action member. He is helpful, dependable, and he has great ideas for the events we run. He gets along well with students and staff and is a pleasure to have as a student. He is a great role model for our other students. And Mrs. Ailey said, Michael is a true role model to all of his peers. He's respectful to all staff and his classmates. He cares about everyone, always asks how you're doing, asks how he can help, and wishes you a good day every time he leaves. Michael is so dedicated to helping Ms. Gloff and I with the snack shack every day. I'm not sure what we would do without him. So, Michael, I have to tell you this. So I have the pleasure of supervising the 6th grade cafeteria, which is one of the highlights of my day. It really is. And every single day I say, hello to everybody, and I have always asked that if anybody wants to switch their table, that they ask me. And of course, sometimes people switch tables and they don't ask me. Michael, you ask never once complained. You always come up to me and say, Miss Brady, is it all right if I sit at this table today? And I say, of course, Michael. And I don't think you know how much I appreciate that you've, not only heard what I've asked, but that you've done it and that you do it over and over with fidelity. It just shows how respectful you are, how mature you are, how much you're listening. And that goes such a long way. It's so easy to say, she won't notice, and you're probably right. But I noticed that you paid attention, and that really, it makes a huge difference. These are the things that brighten my day, and I know it's something little, but it's a big deal, and you deserve this award. I need to tell you that. You also, I have to echo all of the sentiments about student council and student congress. You are phenomenal. Every single day, you're like, Ms. Brady, can I walk around, and I'm just going to set up here, and I'm going to sell, and I'm going to do, and I'm like, you go, Michael, because I think without you, there wouldn't really be much of a student council or congress at all. You're phenomenal. And when I talked about with all the staff, I said, who would be a great student to nominate? You were hands down everybody's first choice. So I just want to commend you for everything that you're doing, for the maturity, for the positivity that you bring to our middle school, because even if it seems like something little to you, it makes a huge difference in mine and all of your teachers' lives. So thank you so, so much, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, well done.
Yay.
A good man you got there.
So I'm trying to show
Thank you.
here's the certificate of appreciation. I'll leave it in your office, Miss Brady. Please give it to Michael, and congratulations.
Thank you as soon as I see you tomorrow, okay, Michael?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
So I just have a brief statement to conclude and round out my superintendent's report, and then I'll pass it back over and actually pass it to the auditors for their auditor presentation. So it came into my inbox a couple of emails to the board regarding the school performance reports that came out to the public through New Jersey right before spring break. In 2021-2022, these reports include all the data that was previously reported prior to COVID-19 pandemic. That includes assessment results and accountability data. These reports do not contain student growth by median growth percentile for what we know as MSGPs. So in the past, the New Jersey assessment measures student growth. And so just to give you that caveat that the data that's used, because there were no state tests the past couple of years, they're not measuring growth. They're just measuring a moment in time. So there was no testing 1920 or 2021 in those school years. So the data that is there is just a point in time, not the growth, and it reports some other information as well. We use that data to start conversations, identify gaps in the information presented from the state, and continue to find ways to address impacts of COVID-19 on students' social and emotional learning, mental health, and academic progress. The New Jersey Department of Education did suggest that the data and information in the reports can be used in conjunction, when available, with school and district data to identify priorities. And you'll see that actually next week in our budget hearing presentation. We started to look through that data first as a group, looking at that data against our local data to make decisions. So you'll see that in our budget presentation next week on how we might use some of our state aid to address some of the gaps in social emotional learning, mental health, and academic progress. The New Jersey Department of Education recommends caution in using and comparing the data from year to year because it's not apples to apples. Because they're using separate data this year than they did in previous years, they do caution and recommend being careful in comparing the data. Like I said, the team has the reports. We're using and reviewing the data against our local data to make a claim. And for example, one of the things you'll see next week would be my recommendation to support increase in interventions in both math and ELA and some other areas of support. So more specific information on the performance reports will be coming next month after we do the board hearing, plus the group's plan on how to address some of the concerns that we have across the district. Thank you.
Thank you. So we move on to our auditor's presentation. Would anyone introduce that, or? Sure.
I would like to introduce Mr. Bill Colantano, and Mr. Jonathan Weiss. They are from our independent auditing firm of Bedard, Kirowicki and Company, CPAs. They perform an independent audit each year and provide us with the reporting that we have to send to the state. It's called the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. It used to be ACFR.
It's taking me some time to get used to
Yeah,
it.
they changed it from CAFR to ACFR. And they're going to present their report to the board on the performance of the district for the 2021-2022 school year.
A couple of extra copies of
Everyone has this copy of the
We have them already.
Everybody should hopefully have it down this week. Can everybody hear me okay? Oh, fantastic. Okay.
And just speak close to the mic.
You got it. As always, it's our pleasure to come before the board and talk about results of operations for the past fiscal year that we audited, June 30th, 2022. And my name is John Weiss. I lead the audit for the firm. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by my friend Bill Colantano, sitting right over here. Now, no matter where I go, no matter what I did this past fiscal year, no matter what size school district, I could pretty much count on three things happening. The first is a great thing, and that's things getting back to normal after the COVID shutdowns. And we see evidence of it all over our financial highlights in that year. And we'll drill down on the details shortly. We're also going to see the effects of federal stimulus funds. And these are not recurring revenue streams. I speak primarily of the ESSER and the ERA ESSER grants. These are grants with three-year useful lives that we can use for various things, hopefully of a non-recurring nature. The third thing is the effects of inflation, because inflation is going to affect everybody, either individually or in this case, the school district. And I look particularly at the transportation expenses as I talked about this, because that was the one thing that really glared out at me as I was preparing for tonight's meeting. Now, from 1,000 feet up, looking at revenues compared to this year to last year, we have a decrease of about $9 million. Now, right at the outset of our conversation, we don't really have a decrease in $9 million in revenues. We had a bond refinancing. So when we put these together, we like to put all the soup in the pot. And when we do that, we have to consider the effect of refinancing bonds, which happened not only in 2020, 2021, but also in 2012, 2013. And as we can see, there's $11.4 million in 2021 that we're certainly not going to be doing every year. And if we look just a bit to the right to the 2012, 2013 column, there's $13,640,000 in refunding bonds. So knowing that we're not going to be doing that every year, our actual performance for the year. Is everything okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there any way of putting the numbers in the spreadsheet that you're talking about on Zoom? Because we have a substantial number of people attending virtually.
Oh, boy, unfortunately, we had to prepare this one in the office on the line. I couldn't apply beforehand, but if there's someone who can scan it and make it available on Zoom as I'm going, that may be more advantageous.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on for a bit. Once we consider the other financing sources for the bond reissuance, we're actually looking at an increase in revenues of about $2 million. And that's going to comprise primarily of our general fund real estate tax levy, as well as some additional general fund state aid, and some special revenue fund aid, primarily from the federal government. Going down the line, some of the big comparative items for our revenues is going to be obviously our general fund, which is kind of high at 569,732, but within the 2% limitations that a district can impose for the general fund tax levy. In addition to that, our tuition between this year and last year went up a little bit. The district received a student from another district, I believe it was Carter Board of Education during 2021-2022. Also, there were increases in interest in other miscellaneous items. Primarily, those were refunds of prior year expenses. There was an unemployment claims insurance overpayment in the prior year that got refunded, as well as some tuition and lighting rebates. That also, while it's nice when we get them, we certainly can't count on that as something like that every year. Moving down to state aid, the real big change with state aid this year was the maintenance of equity aid. And that was an aid given to select districts in the state of New Jersey, and the district received about $850,000 for this aid this past year. That's not a recurring revenue stream, and is being implemented into the 2022-2023 budget? Yes, on a couple of specific projects. When we look at the federal aid, as we talked about at the outset of our conversation, there's going to be the impact of additional federal stimulus funds. And those are going to be in the form of your ESSER grants. And those are for specific purposes, such as accelerated learning during the summer, certain mental health criteria, things of that nature. And while they're there and we should be spending them now, we certainly can't depend on it as a revenue stream going forward consistently year in and year out, the same way we would for the Title I grant or the IDEA, both of which are somewhat significant for this district. Any questions, comments, concerns on revenues? Okay, we're going to work our way down and take a moment or two to talk about expenditures. And from 1,000 feet up, right away, I'm looking at the difference between total operating expenditures between this year and last year. And that's to the tune of about 5.39% overall increase between this year and last year, which is pretty good. By and large, there aren't a lot of unusual variances, except for a couple of things. We talked a little bit about things getting back to normal. One of the things that happens when things get back to normal is that lunchtime gets back to normal, which means we have to bring in more aides, which means our expenses are going to go up proportionally. And that's reflected a bit in our operations and maintenance line. Pupil transportation. What I did on that one was looked at what transportation costs were prior to the COVID outbreak, which were about 2.12 mil. Things start getting shut down in 2020, goes down. Continue being shut down for a good chunk of 21, things go down further. Inflation and things getting back to normal, look at our spike. We go up to 2.473 mil. Employee benefits went down, and that's not something we're going to get used to because school districts participating in the New Jersey State Health Benefits Plan had a 1 month quote-unquote holiday last year, where the month of February was not due for state health benefits. We do not want to get used to that because that's now gone, as well as the effect of increases in health benefit premiums. It's kind of like a double whammy. So it was nice while we had it, but now that it's gone, we have to think about how we're going to be dealing with this. Moving down past operations, the capital outlay, we have an increase there, and that was primarily for the new track project. That was done via cooperation with Highland Park Borough. Any questions, comments, concerns on expenditures? Okay. We're going to talk about surplus a little bit here. Now we're going to talk about it a lot when we get further into our presentation. So from 1,000 feet up, surplus goes up about $1.5 million between this year and last year. A lot of that is, when we generate surplus, two things have happened. We realized more revenue than we budgeted, and we spent less money in expenses than what we had appropriated. Combination of those two things will generate surplus for you. In this particular year, the thing that's really sticks out is going to be the maintenance of equity aid, because that was $850,000 that the district didn't budget for, but realized as revenue per state guidelines this past fiscal year. And the effect of that made it possible to increase the capital, emergency, and maintenance reserves. You can see bump ups in all three of those categories. There's still quite a bit of surplus anticipated to offset appropriations. So that amount automatically, the second the calendar goes from June 30th, 2022 to July 1st, 2022, that money is gone in anticipated as a budget revenue to offset tax increases. The unrestricted fund balance of 2.33 mil minus 1.703 mil, we have an increase there of about $500,000, a little over $500,000, and that's the remainder of the excess revenues, primarily the maintenance of equity aid that hasn't been put to the reserves. That's primarily the result of that. And we have to remember a couple of things about our unrestricted free surplus, and that is that we're limited into how much money we can have. And if you live in the state of New Jersey, you can't have too much money, especially if you're a school district. And you're limited to 4% of your annual expenses, plus some exemptions for things like maintenance of equity aid. You can't count on that every year. Plus your unbudgeted extraordinary special education cost aid. So if we receive $500,000 in extraordinary special education cost aid, but budget $300,000 of it, we can only really take $200,000 as an exception to our excess surplus calculation. Anything going over what's quote unquote maximum allowable surplus goes back to the taxpayers as excess surplus. In this case, the district had more than enough wiggle room to avoid an excess surplus situation. And we'll drill down a bit further on the numbers as we look at our multi-year schedules. Any questions, comments before we move on to a couple of charts? What I'd like to do on the next page on the top is look at the revenue stream and break it up into where the money's coming from. And as we can see, our great big green wedge is going to be the tax levy. So we have a 1-2 punch, maybe a bit of a third punch here in Highland Park. And that's the tax levy and some state aid. Now, the bit of a third one is the federal sources of $2.4 million, but we really can't count on that every year because a lot of that is going to be the ESSER money. And the ESSER money we can count on for about maybe the next 3 fiscal years, and then that will dry up. So the federal sources, which looks a little bit now, normal operations, it's normally maybe about half that size. What we're going to do now is take a look at the tax rate for the school district. And one of these things we can control, 2 of these things we can. Green and purple are out of our hands. But the blue line is the direct school tax rate. Those are the things we can control. And if we look, specifically between 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, we've done a big job of stabilizing that tax rate. Any questions, comments, before we take a look at expenditures a bit more? Okay. So working my way from the top on our pie chart, my expectation for any school district is that this pie is going to be full of wedges that are primarily green, blue, purple, and in this case a bit of peach. And the bit of peach is going to be the special revenue fund money. And that should be about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way full of green, blue, purple, peach. And I'm not disappointed. We can see our regular instructions starting from the top left-hand corner. dark green, they've got 8,042,000. Our other instruction for special ed and basic skills reinforcement in English as a second language, tuition costs, student and instruction related services, our nurses, librarians, guidance counselors, child study team. They all go into that bucket. Our administrative staff and operations and maintenance, transportation costs, employee benefits. As we talked about, that wedge went down a little bit this year. Don't get used to it. That's going right back up in the coming years. As we mentioned, our peach wedge is going to be a bit higher, just like it was for the revenue we talked earlier, because of our ESSER grants, which will soon be dropping out. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to stack these right below, and I'm going to look at the numbers year by year, and see how level these bars are, and things are pretty level for me. Green, blue, purple, and I'm looking specifically right now at 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. Those are all, I think we have a typo in here. Got to call it quick audible. First year should be 2013, last year should be 2022. Forgive the misstep. But we caught it. Here now. Now, the important thing I do want to point out is purple was ticking down. Purple will tick back up. Peach is ticking up. Peach will tick back down. I'm going towards the top of our bar graphs. And we know it's coming, more importantly. Any questions, comments? Okay. And take a moment and drill down on surplus a bit more. And I'm going to work from the bottom up this time. And we got to do another audible on this one. This is going to work from 2013 to 2022 again. Forgive the misstep, but I think we can get this. Working from the bottom up, we're going to work our way from green to blue. Dark green being the most kind of restricted of funds, the things we have less access to the blue, which gives us a little more wiggle room on things. If we look at our pie, the general fund restricted capital reserve is going to be 1.798 mil. Those are the funds limited to projects approved in the district's long-range facility plan. To fund those applicable projects without necessarily having to go to the taxpayers, or if we did have to go to the taxpayers, go to them for maybe a little bit less than what we planned on doing. Our emergency expense reserve, because things can and do break, you want to give yourself those provisions if the needs arise. Our maintenance reserve for the applicable expenses in our comprehensive maintenance plan. Our unemployment trust fund. A committed fund balance, those open encumbrances at the end of the year. For the goods that were ordered but not yet received, those funds are still committed even though the stuff's not here yet. Our assigned fund balance of $2,210,000, that was the tax relief we talked about earlier in our conversation. And our unassigned fund balance of $1,816,319, which represents our maximum allowable surplus. Now, once I look and see that we're about two-thirds of our pie full of wedges that are restricted, more or less. I still have about a third of this pie in unassigned fund balance, which lends itself to a relatively healthy financial situation. But as we talked about earlier, a lot of this could be the result of the maintenance of equity aid. So I always have to look at this with a bit of a grain of salt. Good news for the district that you got it, but it's not a revenue stream we can entirely count on. I'm also going to stack these up right above. And as we mentioned earlier, we just want to move the numbers one to the left. And if I'm working my way over, especially 2019, 2020, 2021, we've built up a bit in our reserves, which is good for us. Using a chunk of the surplus to offset budget revenue increases. and most importantly, especially over the last few years, be able to generate some free surplus to give us a bit of wiggle room should the need arise for something. Any questions, comments on surplus?
A quick question on
Yes.
the unassigned amount.
Hmm?
It seemed like it was always a smaller percentage of our overall fund, but it seems in the last 2 years it's gotten up to almost a third of the overall portion.
Mhm.
Is that, what's the word? Is that comparable to like other districts as well, or?
A bit higher because Highland Park School District is my only school district this past season that got the maintenance of equity aid. And I'm going to keep banging that hammer because one, it's significant, and two, I can't count on it every year.
Can I add to that? There's a schedule, it's a Excel spreadsheet. If you look at the bottom of the page, you're talking about the free balance. The last 2 years, we were allowed to maintain a 4% balance. And John indicated we had a large increase in aid, so it became part of the 4%. Next year, it's going back to 2. But the 8 years prior to that, we were only allowed to have 2%.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? And I do want to spend a couple more moments talking about this schedule when we get to it. I was going to say a couple of words about enrollment. Unless we have something else for you.
No, maybe I'll just ask about the surplus. I mean, in any particular year, when we do less than a 2% property increase, you know, say a district would do 1.8, say using some of the surplus, then the following year they're allowed to make that up. Is that in this sense, or how does that affect the property tax cap increases going forward?
How does it affect the property tax increases going forward? Well, mainly speaking, the name of the game is to try and keep things as consistent as possible. No one likes surprises. As I get older, I don't like them either. And the way to do it is to try and measure these things out as best you can to try and make the impact of any significant change as not impactful as possible to the homeowner if you can help it. And sometimes you're a victim of circumstance and your hands are tied on things. If you anticipated a bunch of money in tuition revenue and it's not there, you're going to find yourself in a hole that may be difficult to dig out of. Everything is situational depending on facts on the ground. In this case, fortune smiles upon the district a bit, but it's not something that I can really rely on year in and year out. I'm hoping that answers it.
But specifically, if a district does less than 2% in any particular year, in the following year, allowed to exceed the 2% property cap?
There are some exceptions.
No. You have, the property tax is 2% above what your current property tax is. So if you go less than 2%, your base for the next year is just going to be that. And then you add 2%. You can't recoup whatever you did. There is something else called banked cap, however, where you are allowed to exceed the 2% for certain specific reasons, one of which is excessive health benefit increases. And if you decide not to use that, that gets banked, and you can use that to exceed the 2% in the future. But you cannot exceed 2% because you went under 2%.
But in this year, when we're doing 3.1, in theory, you could bank part of that.
The health benefit increases, yes, if you didn't need it to cover your expenditures.
Thank you so much.
John, can I add one thing?
Sure.
When you get your audit reports, they were delivered last week, I don't know if you have them yet or not, but there is an exhibit in the report, it's the J7, that gives you the tax rates for the last 10 years. And the school tax rate, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is up 90 cents over the last 10 years, which comes out to be about 21%. That includes debt service. So you're right on what they're looking for, a 2% increase per year. After John's finished with his presentation, I want to talk about tax rates here, which is completely unique to all our other communities.
Okay. Any more questions, comments on surplus? Because we are going to do a bit more on surplus. We'll get our fill tonight, don't worry. Now, take a second and talk about enrollment. We expanded a couple things, just looking at what's going on enrollment-wise on the surrounding county level. Those are the five we have: Mercer, Middlesex, Monmouth, Somerset, Union. Middlesex is running second place here, but Union's running away with it at the moment. Looking at the school districts in the county, as far as population goes, Highland Park is not nearly as big as, say, the East Brunswicks, Edison's, Monroe, Brunswicks, but we can see that we're stacked right next to comparable sized districts. And if we look at enrollment for the last 10 years, things have ticked up this year. We went from 1552 to 1611. A bit more on surplus. And I'm going all the way on the right here. We're going to give you 10 years of material to look at. And thankfully, my ears are right. Oh my gosh, something worked for me tonight. Now, June 30th, 2013 to June 30th, 2022, and I'm zeroed right in on June 30th, 2022. From 1,000 feet up or so, we've got about a $1.5 million increase in surplus between this year and last year. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go right from the top, right to the bottom of the page, because I want to see what my maximum allowable fund balance is going to be. So I'm going to take my total expenditures, multiply them times 4%, which I'm still allowed to do this year. And I was also allowed to do the prior year, but I can't do going forward, unfortunately. I'm going to get my 1.361 million just as a base. I'm going to add in my extraordinary aid, my maintenance of equity aid, and my non-public transportation aid. All the stuff we can't budget for, really have no idea what it's going to be until the state tells us what it's going to be. And that gets especially dicey with the extraordinary special education cost aid. Because if you have extraordinary special education cost aid, you also have what comes with it, which is big special education costs. In the last 2 or 3 years, the state has reimbursed at a much higher percentage for these costs. But it's not necessarily something I count on year in and year out. Taking all these things into consideration, we have a maximum available free surplus of 2.544 mil. And the unrestricted free balance is 2.233 mil after we get our total surplus, make our applicable transfers to reserves, and account for the amount that has been appropriated in the subsequent year's budget as tax relief. So if you look, we have a bit of a dip in encumbrances between this year and last year, and that's just a reflection of what the status of your open purchase orders are, whether you got the goods or not. Our capital reserve, and my friend over here has a great line where he tells you how much money you have before he starts taking it all away from you. And in this case, with your capital reserve of the amount that you have, $21,130, was appropriated in your 2022-2023 budget. The second the calendar went from June 30th to July 1st. The same can be said of your maintenance reserve, which right off the bat, $127,700 came off the top to finance applicable budgetary needs. Maintenance reserve, we were able to put a couple of dollars in there. Our tax relief went up by about $300,000 compared to last year, the amount we're budgeting to offset tax hikes. And the difference being our maximum unrestricted free balance. Forgive me, been talking all day. Any questions, comments? Okay. A word or two about the audit. We typically come in once or twice a year, and we'll come in and look at everything from financial reports to pay vouchers to payroll books to timesheets to cafeteria activity to student activity stuff to enrollment records to transportation reports. We look at a lot of things. The results of the audit this year had 3 recommendations. First recommendation is a continued effort to staff the business office. Primarily someone with accounting experience assisting the school business administrator. Our second recommendation is the follow-up of point of sale lunch balances. We do want to make sure that amounts due to the district are collected. We also had a few audit suggestions this past year. And suggestions are just exceptions to the audit where a formal corrective action isn't needed, but we want to make sure we say something. So what we wanted to do with this one is just point out that a review of purchase orders may be needed specifically for tuition-like things, just to make sure the status is right. Particularly when we're proposing changes to the client. We have to look at materiality, how much it is. And we did have a couple of things that needed changing there, so we're hoping that gets ironed out a bit. What we also want to do, and I said this at the outset of our conversation regarding suggestions, is that we have, the state of New Jersey says you can't have too much money. That also applies to your food service fund. Your net cash resources can only be a certain dollar amount. And the district is a little bit over on that. And the primary reason for that, and it's a problem that many districts are having, the increase of federal funds, primarily to pay for student lunches over the past 2 years, has resulted in excess net cash resources for a bunch of people. And Highland Park is no exception to that. So we just make a note that procedures be implemented to essentially spend the cash down. In addition to that, we had minor errors on the ASSA report for the low income. So we do want to iron that out going forward. And the only other thing we had was a 3-year payroll verification process. We had a minor error on that one as far as the proper sign-offs on the forms and stuff like that. With that, I'll be happy to take any other questions, comments, concerns. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Bill Tolentano.
For a short presentation. I just wanted to highlight a couple things. Highland Park is unique. And Steve, you threw out the order report so I can refer to specific pages.
Can you please speak into the microphone? Thank you.
For those of you who have your order reports in front of you, I want you to look at the J7 exhibit, which is on page 115. I indicated a little bit earlier, Highland Park is the most unique community that we have as a client in school districts. We have about 25, 26 school districts. You have by far the highest tax rates for school purposes, municipal purpose, county purposes, because your assessed values are so low. The exhibit that reflects that is, I think it's J6. J6, the county says Highland Park is assessed at 41.9% of the total assessed values of the community. If we had a true value of $1,416,000 as opposed to your present assessments of $591, your school tax would probably be about $2 for both the K-8 district and the high school, which is equivalent to our other districts. So this is extremely misleading. So I don't want you people to think that you have a high tax rate because you have high taxes. You don't really. You have low assessed values.
No, excuse me. We just reevaluated the tax rates in town and have got a new tax rate that's consistent with the real values of the homes. So you'll see this next year going down to the more typical values of other school districts and other towns. So an average house was valued at $150,100.
It's probably about 600 now.
It's 500 and some odd to 600, yeah. And those of us who are owning homes got our new valuation on our homes and our new tax rate and our new tax dollars. And it's consistent with the other towns.
What I was wondering, we revaluation is really unique. Now, in this particular case, this has been a long time coming.
Very long.
So usually what happens with a revaluation, normally you won't have to pay more taxes. It would be spread evenly throughout the community. But when it takes a long time to have another revaluation, everything gets thrown out of kilter. So I don't know if it was a good thing for you or otherwise. I don't know what your taxes went up or down.
I wouldn't speak for myself, but for people I've spoken to, it looks like the rates are consistent or slightly lower for most homeowners. That's the general feeling. I don't know. I can't give you specifics, but I think it was reasonably well done.
I was worried about that, to tell you the truth, because we had little Glen Gardner up in Hunterdon County, and they were forced into a revaluation because their pure values were considered to be 70% of the true value, but they were forced into it. And I was wondering what was happening to Highland Park. The other thing that I wanted to bring out, again, John's exhibit, the spreadsheet, and he went over the increases in surplus in the various categories. And I said, John says, we tell you how much you have, then we take it away. What you've done over the last 10 years, the real year 2013 to 22, your surplus has increased at roughly $3,680,000. But during that 10-year period of time, you've given back to the taxpayers $10,764,000 in tax relief as far as surplus that was anticipated in your budget. And that was primarily a result because you were forced at a 2% increase in taxes. In order to keep that 2%, you had to surplus in. But the fact that you did give back $10,764,000 in tax relief, and we also identified, and then this exhibit, $2,162,000 capital reserve money that was used to offset costs of projects, and the maintenance reserve, $366,000 was also used. So I increased it by $3,600,000, and I've used $13,300,000 over that 10-year period of time, where you've used $13,300,000. So, and I indicated before, the taxes were at the 2%. So you've actually done good. That's all I have.
Questions?
Which line is on the spreadsheet is the 10L?
It's not. Okay, I'll tell you where it is. Right in the middle, roughly, you'll see two categories. One that says budget appropriation tax relief, and also right under it says excess surplus prior year.
Yeah.
If you added all those numbers across for the 10-year period of time, you would come up with $10,760,000. A lot of things are hidden in here. But what the superintendent was indicating before, John just went through, you can't always compare one year to the next. There's always something weird going on.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to get back to our agenda. And we're going to go on to board committee reports and recommendations. And then we will open up the public comment and then come back to the voting part of our meeting. So that's the plan. And Allison, you want to start with curriculum and instruction?
Yes, so curriculum instruction met on April 4th. It was myself, Ms. Krieger, Ms. McFadden, Dean Nicola, and Dr. Nicosia. We discussed the substance abuse prevention programs. There is a list that we are going to review. This is in response to the revision of our substance abuse policy, which I'll talk about a little bit more. In lieu of suspensions, we are looking towards a therapeutic approach, so we're going to be looking at both virtual and in-person options for intervention in those cases. The policy was also revised to be more detailed in regards to why testing may be required before returning to school, and that the information is under limited access, and it does not follow students past their time in the district. Records remain confidential. Free services will also be included in regulation, and it also clarifies that the superintendent may, but may but is not required to disclose the student's identity to law enforcement authorities. The second item we discussed is the sidebar negotiated with the HPEA. This sidebar adjusts teacher schedules to reflect the new start times and adjusts staff meeting times accordingly. It also adjusts the number of after-school staff meetings. We touched base on AP statistics. Unfortunately, no paperwork has been submitted for course approval. At this point, it's too late to submit this course for approval in the fall. So if paperwork is submitted, it would be considered for 24-25 school year. And as we said, we have administrative proposed changes to our substance abuse policy. On our agenda tonight, we have approval for field trips requests as attached. We have the approval of HIP reports, incident BS223-11, BS223-12A, BS223-12B, HS222309, MS222307A, and MS222307B. We have the approval of the Highland Park Schools safe opening and continuity of service plan. This is the plan that we had to create in response to COVID. There are no changes, but we do have to approve that it continues. And the approval of the sidebar. Any other questions for curriculum instruction?
Could you explain the statistics a little bit more, just as a math person, just disappointed?
Yes, so in order for the course to eventually get to us to approve it as a new course, a teacher or staff member has to submit paperwork to Dr. Nicosia, kind of detailing the course, what the requirements would be, the rationale for it, the curriculum that would be needed. No staff member has submitted that yet, although we did have someone speak at public comment a few weeks ago expressing that there was huge interest in this. There hasn't been follow-up. So we are just continuing to touch base because the community, I feel, based on what we've heard, would appreciate a course like this in high school, but unfortunately, nothing can be done until paperwork is submitted.
Isn't it the case that we just ask the staff member to write a course proposal if we want to run a course? I'm confused.
That's not something that the board can do. However, students can urge a staff member to propose a course.
Why does it happen? Is it because students have not gone to a staff member, or a staff member has not been interested in it, or?
I don't have that information.
AP staff.
Yeah, again, I don't know the inner workings of the details of what's happening on a day-to-day basis, but nothing has come across my desk. So a staff member has not submitted it through, so it goes through curriculum, which means that Ms. Saka would get it, review it, sign off on it. Then Mr. Lasser would get it, review it, sign off on it, and then it would come to my desk, and that hasn't happened. So I don't, and Mr. Lasser or Ms. Saka said it hasn't come to their desk either. So I don't know if a staff member has it in their drive and they're drafting it and getting to it. I don't know if they're not doing it at all. I have no idea.
Can the board encourage the administration to encourage the staff member to do this?
We can.
It's part of our responsiveness to the community.
Ms. Saka and Mr. Lassiter are aware of the interest in the course and are encouraging staff members if they do agree.
You can imagine, like, when the public comes and says we're interested in the course, and we're like, well, somebody hasn't done anything about it. So it's kind of. I understand what's going on, how the administrative process works.
Yes.
I mean, I agree. We can't order the staff member to do it.
Right.
I think most educational institutions, when the institution decides they want a course, they order a staff member to write the proposal for a certain deadline. So I'm not sure why that hasn't happened in this case.
Because we don't require it if the staff are interested. And the only ones we do that are required are if they're required by the state of New Jersey. So if I have to run, for example, one of the things you'll see in the budget proposal is theater and dance, because those are required by the state of New Jersey now. So
that is something I have to require. Thank you, Mr. Hurd. There's a requirement by the New Jersey Department of Education. So AP Stats is not a requirement by the New Jersey Department of Education, so I can't force anybody to do it.
Well, can the board like sign a resolution saying that we as a board would appreciate the administration? I mean, how does this work? Because if like the board feels this is an interesting course, we don't want to micromanage.
Correct.
But we have members of the public coming forward saying this is an interesting course. I mean, how can we make our wishes, if that was our wishes?
I will communicate it to administration that the board would love to support an AP Stats class.
But I'm even more concerned about the structural aspect of this now, as opposed to the specific AP stat. I mean, for most educational institutions, there's a committee that decides what courses to run, and it's not optional for the staff members to.
That's not how it works in public education. Because we have to go.
Teachers,
well, no, I mean it's a collective discussion. So we had some options. So for example, a couple months ago we approved the course descriptions for the 4 senior courses, the new grade 12 English courses. So that was a conversation. So during a department meeting, Ms. Rodriguez was working with the ELA teachers, and they talked about this idea of giving students more choice, voice and choice. That's a conversation we've been having. They finally came to a collective agreement about what those might be. Remember, we put out a survey to the students, what do you want to see? We reviewed the survey data, so it was a whole process that was a department-wide conversation. Also, grade 12 English is a requirement, but what that is was a conversation. They collaborated, Ms. Rodriguez worked with them to collaborate on the four classes, and then they brought it across our desk. So it's a process, because we also need their input to decide, because at the end of the day, they have to write curriculum, we have to decide on texts and resources and all of that. If it's an AP class, what the difference that you have to understand is for an AP class, I do need input from a staff member, because you have to be certified to teach an AP class. Which means that a teacher has to go over the summer to get certified in that course. I can't just say, hey, Mr. Lee, you have to teach AP Stats now. He might not, if he's not certified to teach it, he cannot teach it. If he has no ability to take the course over the summer, then he is not certified to teach that class. So you have to understand AP classes are a whole lot different from nutritional science that we put into place, or forensic science that we put into place, or English classes. AP classes are very, very specific, because yes, I do need some teacher buy-in from it to some degree, because they would then have to go get certified to teach it. So it's just different than saying, I'm going to offer AP Stats, but if I have no one certified to teach it, it's never going to run. So to some degree, I could create the document right now, bring it across your desk, and certify the class, but if I have no one certified to teach it, it's never going to run, and we just wasted our time.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. It's complicated.
No. I understand that. I'm not expecting that. Like Ann Gower walks in and says, like, let's do something, AP Stats. But I mean, what is this? Like, if parents are interested in a class, they come and they talk to the board. Maybe they talk to their teachers, or the kids talk to their teachers, and then so does at some point.
Or Miss Saka or Miss Rodriguez, somebody in the curriculum office.
Right. So parents should go. Like, what if a parent or a student is interested in the class? Do they know to contact the curriculum?
Yeah, or they contact their teacher, they contact the principal. There's definitely a lot of people they can contact saying, we're interested in running this course, or we want this course, and so a conversation starts to happen.
Okay, so is the conversation happening now? Do we, I mean, I don't want to require internal deliberations, but is that process starting as a result of people coming and saying, we're interested in it?
Well, I mean, that's how, I mean, the AP Stats was something that was a conversation, but again, if no one it depends on if it's AP versus not AP. It's just 2 different conversations.
Okay.
Do we offer incentive for people to get certified?
We pay them to go take the training.
I guess.
Unfortunately, there's no board union negotiated. That is a labor relations issue that we have to talk about with the union.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
So parents or students should just continue to mention it to their teachers.
Teachers, administration, curriculum supervisors, if they're interested in courses.
And there's never like a top-down sort of
if it is a mandate by the state of New Jersey, there is a
No,
top-down.
I'm talking about things that are not mandated by the state of New Jersey.
Yes. Well, if somebody came to me, that would be top down. I would certainly go and say, hey, they're interested in a, I don't know,
AP stats.
not AP, because I can say, yes, there's an interest in AP stats, but if I don't have a staff member that is interested in teaching that, then AP kind of falls flat because I need someone certified.
Right.
But if somebody were to come and say, I would like to, I'm trying to think of something that is relevant. I want a marine biology class. I'd love to have marine science. That would be a great, okay, great. So I'll go to Ms. Saka and I bring it to her attention. Ms. Saka, the step supervisor, there's some people that are interested in a marine science class. You know, reach out to the department, discuss it, because there's a myriad of considerations. Is it a semester class? Is it a full year class? What are the resources? Let's look at the curriculum, right? Like, so then they have the conversation as a department. Where does it fill in terms of what are course offerings? If a lot of students sign up for marine biology, what are they not going to sign up for? Where does it fit in the scope and sequence, depending on which, if it's history, math, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all that. It goes through a department conversation, and then from there they can build the course approval process paperwork. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Anything else for curriculum? We're going to tech read excellence. Oh, then we'll leave from the
Yeah.
So why don't we go to finance and facilities and come back to equity? Chris?
Okay, yeah, so we met a few weeks ago as we were talking about with the auditors, just to start out the budget situation for this year is sort of rosy, but then there are some challenges coming up which are going to make it much less so very quickly. There was, if I could just address one question that I got from somebody in the community. We're getting a big increase in state aid. Why can't we have a tax cut this year? So, we did get a big increase in state aid. Unfortunately, we also got a big increase in healthcare costs for the staff. And we also got the mandate to do the universal pre-K program, which in many ways is a really attractive program, but the unfunded mandate part of that program runs into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when you combine those two things, it sort of everything cancels out for the moment. And then, just a personal comment, inflation has been really high. We had 19% inflation over the last 2 years. And so, our staff salaries have not kept up with that, as they have not at Rutgers either. And the difference is we're under a 2% property cap per year, so that's going to be very challenging. So as far as the items that the committee discussed, we discussed the referendum strategies for the pre-K expansion. We do need space for the students. We have a temporary solution for the next 2 years, which created 90 spots. But the state wants us to take around 200 students, assuming they're interested. It should be possible to structure the bond issue so that it doesn't cause a year-to-year tax increase by replacing the expiring bond issues, if that's something that we decide to do. There's increased personnel spending request by the superintendent. About half of this is mandatory spending. There are other items in there, such as the interventionists, which we're going to, I believe, discuss more in the personnel committee meeting on Wednesday. We discussed the committee that's going to meet about the before and after care program. So the solicitation went out, and we're going to need to discuss that on May 2nd. So board members that have concerns about that should get in touch with, let's see, so Marilyn and I are the board members on the committee that Christina has set up. There's the lease purchase for Chromebooks that we've put out, and there was policy transportation by private vehicle we discussed. As far as the agenda items, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are bill lists. 5 is and 6 are the approval of reports. 7 is the Board of Ed certifications. 8 is budget transfers. 9 is expense reimbursements. 10 is the capital reserve for the renovation to the municipal athletic complex. 11 is the emergency reserve to offset increases in healthcare costs, which have gone way up. 12 is the approval, and 13 are approval of reports and plans, respectively. 14 is the approval of contractors for the professional services. 15 and 16, the bedside instruction and the out-of-district placements. 17, the LED lighting upgrade. 18 is the LED lighting upgrade in the auditorium. 19 is the soundboard. And 21 is the grant agreement for the lunch program equipment. 22 is also cafeteria. And 23 and 24. 25 is about the Chromebooks. 26 is the technology purchase. And 27, various items of furniture. 28 is the safety grant application. 29, the source of teachers renewal. 30 is the revised engineering services for the feasibility study for the pre-K. 31 is the acceptance of the, thank you. 31, the item is corrected to read 6660, and that's about the pilot grant for the climate change topics integrated into humanities. 32 is the acceptance of the grants for sustainable New Jersey. 33 is a donation for the Peaks and Valleys program. Thank you very much to Brooke Drasher and Jennifer Mayo. 34 is the donation for the matching funds for the high school music programs. Thank you to First Alliance for Mortgage. 36 and 35 are the board workshops. 37, 38 are contract renewals for the Phoenix and the Cablevision LifePath. 39 dental. 40 renovations for the, there was a proposal for the baseball field, which was approved out of the estate, which was proposed by the HP Booster. HP, what's the name of it?
HP Booster, no, they're not club.
HP, Highland Park.
HP Boosters, I think I forgot the S on that, but I took club out because it's not, they're not a club.
But yeah, thanks to the boosters for putting that together. And finally, 41 is the approval for the food service management. Any questions?
Have we looked into other?
Please do, talking to my microphone, sorry.
I realize that that's Have we looked into other companies for food service management besides Pontonians?
We go out for proposals every 4 or 5 years. And so this is we're going into the final year. So we will be going out for proposals in less than a year.
Thank you.
Just a quick question on the technology purchase 26. This is basically just a complete sort of turnover of what we had.
Yeah, so that was what we talked about, renewing the lease of the new fleet of Chromebooks. Instead of before the pandemic, we had just gotten the fleet for grades 6 through 12. So now we're doing grades 2 through 12 for the new fleet.
I do have one follow-up question on this also. For middle school, I heard that next year the kids will be returning the Chromebooks at the end of the day, so they're staying in school. I think we heard about that. He has his own computer at home. That's not an impact for us, but I feel like that could potentially be an impact for kids that count on.
I'll look into that. Yeah, I'll look into that.
Okay. I have it right.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
A question on 12 and 13, which is the financial report. Do those need to be approved tonight, passed tonight? I'm just thinking, it's like, I don't know that I've ever really found any in this.
You're not approving the report, you're approving the submission of the report to the DOE.
Oh,
That has to be done within 30 days.
okay,
I think we're actually, we're at the 30 days.
okay.
So please do that.
Yeah, it's probably just, yeah, no, I mean, you have plenty of time to, they're not, the numbers are the numbers,
Yeah,
and so you have plenty of time to ask questions at any time.
yeah, anytime I've asked questions afterwards, it's always been kind of like an explanation as opposed to like, oh my goodness, there's something wrong here. It's always been like, when I sent in a question on this, it's just like, this is how we figure that, and that's where it came from. So, okay.
Well, I'm happy to look into anything that you think needs to be looked into.
Right,
But the auditors do a very thorough review, so they usually catch things if they're misclassified, or, I mean, they come back to me with final adjustments.
Okay.
You would believe, pages and pages.
right, no, I've always found it to be very, very dry, but also as accurate as I thought it could be. I've only ever had questions which they answered never.
Yeah, and I can, right. I can give explanations, and then if that's not sufficient, we can forward it to them.
Yeah, but the first part, when you said we're not actually approving this, we're just allowing it to be submitted.
Yes.
That clears
Yeah,
up.
and the DOE actually looks at it. They had a question just today, which I forwarded to the auditors, and the auditors pointed them to the report that actually showed them what they thought was missing.
Okay.
It wasn't there, but they do look at it too.
All right, thank
For
you.
discrepancies.
Anything else for finance? And we're going to go back to equity and excellence. Thank you.
We met on April 20th, and let's see, I'm just going to scroll down here. We talked about the therapeutic supports that are being offered across the district in lieu of ISS and school suspension. This was a follow-up conversation to some prior discussions we had around how we are trying to shift from, or have already shifted from a focus on school suspension to a more therapeutic restorative response. So Dr. Nkojia presented more information on what's happening in Irving, Bartle, middle school and high school. Starting with Irving, the therapeutic model is based on 5 steps of self-regulation, and it's restorative in nature, but also developmentally appropriate for that student population. So the first step is children are given safe space where they can have time and need to change their inner state, being upset to more composed. Then children are, the second step, talk through 5 steps of self-regulation. Then they go through breathing exercises in step 3. And then the 4th step, they talk about feeling buddies, where they're learning not only active calming strategies, but also the essential messages their emotions carry. So it's an educational component there. And 5th, conflict resolution, if needed, and that involves the child in working through solving the original problem before returning to work or play. So that is the Irving model, and then at Bartle, they are, again, building on that, working on restorative school experiences, which is obviously an alternative approach to school suspension. And so RISE, R-I-S-E, is the acronym for this program the schools are using. It's called Restorative In-School Experience. And it's a unique way to process and solve root problems that our children are experiencing, encourage positive behaviors, and discourage repeat behaviors. So this is clearly communicating that behaviors were unacceptable, but also looking at the whole picture of the child to determine the extent to which that student needs extra support or environment needs to also be modified to better support that student. So our conversation in committee also turned to the reporting, state-required reporting in the student safety data management system, that does not provide the space for us to show that we've shifted from in-school suspension. So whenever students are shifted to our RISE program, in the state's reporting system, it goes down as an in-school suspension. So unfortunately, the state system is not accurately reflected in what we're doing here with our practices. So we talked about possibly finding ways to advocate for the state to update their system to allow for districts like ours who are shifting away from a dependence on in-school suspension to allow, again, for us to be able to document that in the state management system so we do have some accurate records on these numbers. So that's a project that we will likely be taking up and trying to really apply some pressure at the state level. Let's see, we also talked about there is a general general perception, I should say, of a lack of consequences and enforcement of the discipline code. And this is more so among the student population, staff, as well as the schools and families, even though this is not the case. So we discussed a couple ideas that came up, was having student-facing and parent-facing materials that would how to present this information to families as well as to the general population here, students, future families, about how we are approaching discipline in our school district. The committee also discussed involving students in the creation of student-friendly materials to encourage other students to take ownership of their problem solving and to really understand the types of responses and approaches to discipline that we have been advocating for and enforcing in the school district. So I know that's something that Dr. McCullough is going to look into with the administration. And then we also touched on I'm sorry, I forgot to speak up here into the mic. Everyone's hearing me on Zoom. Dr. McCullough gave a brief update on the preschool expansion plan. They're continuing to work on registration. We currently have over 90 to 100 students registered, and this will be finished in a few more weeks. The administration will also be hearing back from the architect regarding the feasibility study very soon, hopefully. In the first meeting with the architect, she indicated that Irving might not be the best place to add additional space for pre-K, and that Bartle would likely be a better solution in terms of spacing that we already have available. The architect will provide administration with an update on other building options that she will be looking into as well. And as Chris mentioned, that we look forward to that $40 million debt service that we can borrow against so that any building will not also involve an increase in property taxes. But a referendum will be needed to, of course, add any buildings if that were to be the case. And that is it for my report. Any questions?
Thank you. We're going to move to personnel and communications. Anne?
All right. Is this working? Okay. I can hear myself. Usually it's a booming. Okay. Let me go to okay. Apologies for submitting my report very belatedly, but I did attempt to share it with you all finally. There are a couple items. For the most part, as usual, the report is confidential and confidential personnel matters. You all can review it at your leisure. We do have another meeting coming up this Wednesday, which is kind of unusual, so if anybody has concerns, I know Chris had mentioned to me some of the new personnel hires, so I anticipate we'll be discussing that, new positions, that is, not new identified staff members. Let's see. A couple things I will address when I reach the agenda items. Dr. Nicosia it's been really great. She's been doing exit interviews with some of our staff members who have been leaving. So as with, I think Equity and Excellence also discussed as there was an exit interview with a staff member that had some interesting information for us to reflect on about staff perceptions and staff concerns about the district. Sometimes people feel they can speak more freely when they're leaving, understandably. So we discussed that. It's confidential, but the board will be certainly continuing to reflect on it. We discussed a sidebar that's on the agenda that I think everyone's aware of. It involves the staff, the faculty union, staff and faculty union agreeing to changes in start times. There's some other changes as well involving the number of after-school group meetings that staff would be required as a matter of contract to attend every year. So everyone can review those proposed changes. The administration did share that they are hoping for future years to perhaps implement some half-day in-school meeting time. So staff would have the benefit of, the group meetings that are being removed as an absolute requirement during the day. That wasn't very clear, but there may be more meeting opportunity during the day in future years, depending on what the administration and staff come to agreement on. Okay, moving on to the agenda. Everything is pretty self-explanatory. I just want to say that number 7 is the resignation of our board secretary and business administrator, Ms. Hofola. We are so sorry to see you go. I've been here for 9 years now and we'll miss you. Do you have plans?
It is bittersweet. I will be probably doing consulting work or other temporary attendance assignments.
I imagine they'll be quite in demand.
Well,
presumably. I mean, it's complicated.
just enough.
And not too in demand. Let's see, there is a resignation of a science teacher at the high school, that's number 10. And I understand that we are in the process of screening resumes, so we're right on that. I didn't ask the administration about every resignation and what we're doing, but that one concerned me. It's always difficult to find a science teacher. So I wanted to follow up on that. Let's see, there is a change to number 25. Number 25 is the approval of staff for the summer holistic intervention programs. That's what it sounds like, intervention programs over the summer. Let's see, the change to number 25 is present in some versions of the agenda, but there may be people who are in possession of an older version of the agenda. What number 25 should say is that what it says, except the dates are different. The program will run from July 10th through August 3rd, 2023. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the right one. Now I have 6 different versions here. The correct version is July 10th to August 3rd, 2023. The program will be funded by Title I. That is a change, and the GAAP code number is different. The code number for each item on the table is 20-487-100-110-070-070-01-11, not the other one starting with 20-231.
May I interject? The first 4 pieces of that account are the 20-231. Well, actually, the first 2 pieces, 20-231. The rest could be different because of their assignment or the school. Like 070 is a school code.
I did not notice, you're correct.
Yes. So basically, it's changing from the 20-487, 489 to just 20-231. The rest is pretty much the same.
Got it, okay.
And it's funded by Title I, not ESSER or RS.
So that's what the change in numbering refers
Yes,
to.
yes.
I was incorrect. Yeah. The other numbers are as they were before because they refer to schools, they refer to schools. Possibly other things too that remain the same. So the main change is it's now being funded by Title I, hence the change entirely by Title I. Oh yes, was it previously?
Said and as if we would be able to pull people for looking at just
Because I wanted to have that in as a cover in case we had money left over from ESSER 2, which precedes our ESSER. I guess the plan is to not use any of the ESSER money. I think that's earmarked for other reasons.
Okay, so I'm glad I made that not confusing at all. Let's see. 7, so there's anything not self-explanatory? I don't think so. There are a couple of things related to the agenda. Let me see, just 1 second. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. We did discuss at the Personnel Committee meeting a new policy, use of corporal punishment. It's what it is actually, it's proposed amendments from our policy service, SMA. I have not even looked at it yet, it's not on our agenda to vote on tonight, but my perception from a brief skim was that these are mostly linguistic changes. These are mostly language changes. We are not proposing some kind of major change in the way we treat corporal punishment. It remains as prohibited as it always has. With limited, with faculty permitted to place their hands on students in certain specified situations, we say that's special training and there's a certain emergency situation going on. That's what we're gonna. So you guys take a look at the policy, enjoy. I did ask Dr. Nicosia about Jumpstart Academy at Bartle. I've now lost my copy of the agenda, but there was funding for that. And Dr. Nicosia filled me in, what number was it? Number 27. And what did she tell me? I'm trying to remember right now as we speak. You know what, Dr. Nicosia, I'm easier for you to ask. What exactly is Jumpstart Academy?
Sure, so it's funded by Title I and it's for our Bartle Brothers Mentoring and the Ladies of Peaks and Valleys for a summer program that gets them jump-started to school, coming back. So as part of their mentoring program, they get some academic support, social emotional, mental health preparation to kick off the school year, get back into the swing of things, and that kind of stuff. So we're excited to run that program for the students.
Okay, and again, I think the agendas, there might be some differences in the agenda. Is that an ESSER-funded program?
It says if available,
Oh, if available.
if available, but I believe, I guess right now the gap code is
That's Title I.
27. It should, I thought it was Title I funding, but it maybe it is.
I think any of the ones that say they are ESSER is supposed to be saying Title I. That sheet I gave you didn't say that?
Oh, it might, I thought it was just 25, and then, but you know what?
It also says.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
Oh, perhaps it was on here, number 20. Oh, let me see. Yes, I'm so sorry, the numbers were not on here, but it does, the last couple pages do have some. I apologize. Okay, so moving back to, yeah, we got 25, yes, 25, 26, and 27, the changes are, as I indicated. But if you remember that now, good luck to them. We are moving on, these programs are now to be funded by Title I, is what the agenda should say. Contrary to what some of the older versions of the agenda say, and the gap coding has changed accordingly to reflect that it's Title I funded. And feel free to correct me, somebody, if I got that backwards.
It's the good reversal, sorry.
Yeah.
It's a good reversal to have.
Yes, yes, it is a good
It's Title I funds, so it maintains programs.
Yes.
If I can interject again?
Of course, please.
I believe it was corrected on the board drive, because what I see online says Title I, but the end date, you had said August 3rd?
Yes, the number 25, the correct 25 says August 3rd.
I think it's supposed to be August 10th.
Okay, so scratch that.
Because in here, they didn't change it.
Why is that August 10th?
That's what it said in the correction.
I think it's supposed to be that.
Yes.
And the 26 was changed also to funded by Title I. And also 27, yeah, so all of the ones that said are ESSERs are those three agenda motions.
Okay, yep, so
So I believe it ends August 10th.
Okay, sorry, so
I don't know why that says August 10th.
the agenda was correct. August 10th is the end date of the program, not August 3rd. Ignore that correction. And 25, 26, and 27 are to be funded by Title I. In summary, not ESSER funds. Various versions of the agenda may say different things, but the correct answer is Title I. All right. Well, I could not clarify that. Okay, oh, I know what I was going to ask. There is a funding for a classroom move here, and I helpfully did not write down which agenda item that was, due to departmentalization. I was just going to ask you what that meant. I probably have missed this. It was for Ms. Leeper and Mr. Pascal, I think.
Yeah, so they had to switch. So they had to switch classes to, and wherever our 4th and 5th grade do partial departmentalization, where they either specialize in math or ELA, and they switch classes. So it's for the part. So they had to switch. Essentially, they're switching classrooms.
Okay, but it's related to the trying to.
To the yes, correct. The specialization of math and ELA.
Got it. Okay, I understand. And that's all I got. Thanks, guys. Carolyn gets to ask that, right? Any questions?
I have a comment. I just want to thank Linda. I've worked most closely, I guess, of any board member with Linda, but I think it's 7 years now, 7+ years. And we heard from the auditor about saving the taxpayers $10+ million over the last 7+ years. So I want to thank Linda for her hard work, for the students, the families, and the taxpayers of Highland Park. And whatever we're doing with the budget next year, the taxes for any home or any place you live are going to go down. And so it's a miracle, given these 2% increases. I mean, last few years have been better, but it's a miracle that Linda has been able to manage that and do that and work with the board and superintendent.
I can't say practice.
No, it's a miracle, it really is. So thank you, Linda. I'll be quiet.
Thank you. I think it's a revaluation that. Take credit. I guess I'll take it.
Linda is always there 100% of the time to explain things to us. She always knows exactly what she's talking about. I mean, it's incredibly helpful. Every time a new board member joins, she has to explain the whole process over again. And every time I forget about the process, she has to explain it again. So Linda does a lot of teaching in addition.
Well, I was going to say that's my teaching experience.
You know, you have a lot, so you extended it.
A lot of the teaching of grown-ups.
Chris?
Yeah, could I also just say, in case Ms. Ford is listening, how much I appreciated her service to Highland Park. I just had the highest regard for her throughout her career. I thought she did a fantastic job.
I've heard nothing but wonderful things. We're sorry to see her go.
Any comments for personnel? Okay. Policies, we did not meet. The agenda has 2 policies. One is one on substance abuse, that is a first reading. And the other one is high school graduation, which we talked about the last couple of meetings, and we'll have the second reading on it. So any questions or comments on policy? Not. We're going to move to public comment as soon as I find it. Okay, public comment is what we're moving to next. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board Policy 0164 and 0167 establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. And this is a time when each speaker has 3 minutes. And Linda, one of her other many jobs she does for us is to keep track of the time. I really appreciate that. Please state your name and where you live. And speakers that are in the room will go first, and if anybody online would like to comment, please raise your hand. So we'll start with in the room.
I'm Nicole Stanio at 208 North 3rd Ave. I've expressed my concern in the past about the Board of Education overlooking the needs of the younger students in favor of the older students. So after learning about the recent New Jersey School Performance Report, I was not surprised by the results. The low scores showed that more attention and support needs to be given to Bartle and the middle school academically, environmentally, and with regard to their home life. So with this in mind, I would like to petition once again, the board again, reconsider the earlier start times, because the proposed earlier start times are only going to set Bartle up for failure in regards to attendance and academics. Forcing children who are already struggling to get up children who are already struggling to get up even earlier will take away valuable family time at the end of the day when parents are able to help their children with homework, because they'll have to be in aftercare for longer periods. They'll lose valuable family time because they will have to go to bed much, much earlier. It will take away valuable family time in the mornings when children should be eating balanced meals with their parents and preparing for the school day. We've said this before, but I'll reiterate. Children who get less sleep than necessary, are hurried in the mornings, and spend less time with their families are not going to thrive, and we need them to thrive now more than ever. We're also doing a disservice to the educators who are going to be working under higher stress levels and demands to meet certain baselines, and working with children who are too tired to learn, who are consistently late, causing them to miss valuable class time, and who have less time with their families. I'm asking you to give the younger students some consideration and look at their education holistically, because how can we expect children to do well when they're older, or even now, if they don't have a strong foundation?
Thank you. The answer to real ones.
Hello, Rebecca Estelle, 606 Abbott Street, Highland Park. I just want to talk a bit about the scores. Again, to start, Dr. Nicosia, I appreciate you taking a hard look at the state scores. As a parent and a community member, they seem pretty dismal, and surprisingly so, because it's inconsistent with our fantastic experience we've had here in Highland Park schools. Truly amazing teachers, a wonderful environment. I highly encourage you, in looking at that, to provide a highly specific and detailed public report. I've talked a bunch with parents in town over the last few days, and I can say from our discussions that we would really appreciate the details and to be able to really look at those things and parse those things out ourselves, in addition to receiving the analysis that everyone can put in. I'm going to defer to other social scientists. My friend Ethan, Dr. Skolman over here, a sociologist, for all the specific measurements. But as a layperson, I do have two central questions that are perhaps the answers are related. I know that Dr. Nicosia indicated that this is all tied up to COVID, but I mean, as you know, COVID did not just affect Highland Park. The whole state of New Jersey, in fact, the whole United States and most of the world were affected by COVID. So I'm curious as to how this sort of uniquely hurt us relative to everybody else. And then also it seemed, Dr. Nicosia, that you weren't terribly surprised by these results, or maybe you're just much cooler under pressure than I am. And also just the fact that this wasn't sort of addressed initially, suggested to me that maybe this was something that was, foreseen, perhaps. And I'm just curious if there's a reason that you guys all kind of feel like this was something that was expected, but we were all just completely floored with this. So are we missing something? What is it that parents need to know so that we can evaluate this properly? Because it really does feel like, oh my God. And it didn't feel like a crisis was happening from your perspective, but from our perspective, at least from the uneducated layperson's perspective, it really felt like a serious crisis, not only to education, but to our town. I mean, people decide whether to move here, whether to open a business here, what to do based on these scores, like it or not. And certainly we could talk all day about how terrible relying on one indicator or another is, but at the end of the day, they are. Yeah. But thank you very much, and I do appreciate the time you've given to this.
Thank you.
Ethan Swillen, 423 Harrison Avenue. I also wanted to ask about the scores. I emailed Superintendent Nicosia about this earlier today. He responded really quickly, and I really appreciate that. I'm a parent of two boys in the third grade. My friend Rebecca, the accomplished attorney. We are generally really happy, very happy with our experience in the school. So I was really surprised when some of their scores came out. So the middle school, anyone has looked, has a score of 15.7, the middle school, puts in the 5th percentile. These scores is one of the very worst middle schools in the state. I understand this rating does not take into account growth, but it's a snapshot in time. It is literally unbelievably bad, as in I don't believe it, but that's what it is. Bartle has a score of 30 to the 18th percentile. The high school has held basically steady to the 50th percentile. So there's two things about these scores that I find worrisome. The first, obviously, they're really low. So low, they don't reflect at all my experience in the schools. Even if students are performing better than the scores reflect, it's still a big problem for our ability to recruit good teachers as well as to attract families. So I'd love to hear the board's superintendent's thoughts on how these scores can be brought up. I know the superintendent's taking this seriously. Any initial thoughts? I'd be very interested to hear them. Second, this is kind of a weirder issue and a little more serious in some ways, which is that there is a huge difference in performance between the high school and the middle school. High school is right in the middle, and it hasn't changed. The middle school is in the 4th percentile. So both sets of scores apparently ignore student growth. The same body of students moves from middle school to high school. It's the same parents, the same town demographics, the same school board. So I really want to sharpen the question and ask, why is the middle school rated so much lower than the high school? What is going on in the middle school? Is this a problem the board is aware of, and what is your plan to address it?
Thank you.
Don't start counting yet, Linda. Julia Dewhurst, 180 Dartmouth Street. I also want to say I've learned so much from Linda Hopla. I'm not an accountant, but now I'm really good with numbers. So thank you for teaching me so much and being so kind. Don't. Also, hi students. What I'm speaking on is actually in response to the last meeting, and I realized that was, I guess, about a month ago. So this may seem like old news, but to me, I felt like I still should come and say it. So here we go. Go, Linda. I came tonight to speak on the tabling of the middle school safety specialist at the last Board of Ed meeting. I realize now it has been reposted. I have read the concerns of a small group of parents in the community that are opposed, and I watched the last Board of Ed meeting to understand the reason why the position was tabled. That being said, I do always believe that every hiring committee, Board of Ed should do their due diligence, look into someone's credentials and references. I'm here tonight, however, to share my perspective on the issue. First, I would like to address the need of a youth safety specialist at the middle school. Earlier this fall, there was a voluntary meeting between the middle school and high school staff. This meeting was to discuss our collective concerns of discipline and behavior and how we, the staff, collectively felt there were many issues not being addressed. I believe those concerns were brought to administration and can only assume that that is where the posting for a middle school safety specialist was born. Mind you, I am just assuming maybe this is not the case. All I can share is that most of us felt that the middle school was breeding an unhealthy environment. The behaviors, the language, and the overall demeanor in the halls felt unsafe. It was quoted by many that the middle school students felt unsafe and uncomfortable among their peers and voiced those concerns to teachers and staff. This brings me to the high school youth safety specialist position. For those who feel this is a school to pipe prison line position, I say come spend a day with them. Not only did he receive the Educational Professional of the Year award, he too is an alumni, a resident, a coach, and a direct bridge between the community and some of our most fragile youth at the high school. He also happens to have had a 25-year career with the Department of Corrections behind him. His ability to reach many of our Black and brown students and understand the homes they come from and from the neighborhoods they live in is a gift. When a welfare check on a family is needed, he is there. When a quick response to a situation arises, he is there. Wouldn't we want to hire a similar individual that could be mentored by the high school safety specialist at the middle school? Isn't this an amazing opportunity to start something wonderful? When did Highland Park become a district where we judge someone by their prior career? And are we so short-sighted not to see the benefits when we properly bridge community and law enforcement? I've raised a 27-year-old autistic daughter here at Highland Park and in these schools, and I stay here because of the Highland Park Police Department and because they recognize her. They do a great job with our disabled adults. Highland Park is no different than any other school district in America. We have real problems, real behavior issues, and real drug issues, and real mental health issues. To think we don't need a safety specialist at the middle school is simply unrealistic, and to believe that the position would make the school less safe or cause trauma or cause abuse to our students is simply ridiculous. These are unprecedented times we live in. I don't need to know what research has shown. I can just tell you what I see every day with these children. I appreciate and respect what our safety specialist brings to the high school, and I only ask that you do the same with the middle school. And I cut out this paragraph.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Okay, we're gonna move to a public comment online, and I see one hand raised, Danny, it says. Please introduce yourself. Oh, yeah, back on here. Mr. Stanley, I'm guessing, did you want to speak? No? There you are again. Okay, come on. Maybe unmute yourself, is that the issue?
No. It's able to unmute himself. It's for himself, so I can ask him to unmute. But I can't unmute him.
Hello?
There we go. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I've had a hard time hearing you guys all night, so I didn't know if I was called on or not, I apologize. Joe Stanio, 208 North 3rd Ave. Sorry I couldn't be there personally tonight. My wife is there representing the family. I've been over many statistics, guys, regarding the earlier start times. And today I want to talk about just the 15 minutes might not seem like a big deal for one person, but I want you guys to think about this more of a whole, that 15 minutes affects not only the children that attend Bartle, but their siblings who likely can also be in the primary school. The 15 minutes affects the moms and the dads that work long hours and long days. Mothers that might still have a baby that's not even of school age yet, that's struggling with maybe a postpartum depression, or struggling to nurse their child late at night. Now you're forcing her to get up even earlier in order to accommodate one school, in order to accommodate the high schoolers, a minimal amount of high schoolers. In Bartle, you have 7 to 10-year-olds. In Irving, you have 3 to 6-year-olds. According to my calculations, when you're affecting 7 to 10-year-olds, you're affecting all the way down to little babies and newborns. You're essentially impacting a generation of children and families by this decision. You might not think it's a big deal, but you're impacting the generation of children and families for a few inconvenienced high schoolers who should be taught responsibilities and scheduling focus as they prepare for college and a workforce that's ahead of them, not rely on children under the age of 10. And we're seeing the statistics now that they're already struggling, and what you're doing, it's going to make it even worse. And if you think that this is going to help the middle school as these children from Bartle are going to transition into there, you guys are not thinking about the big picture here. Thank you very much, and I hope you make the right decision, guys, because this is not a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers or public? Online? Seeing none, right, we're going to move on to our board action items. Instruction, and Allison, if we move your agenda.
Under curriculum and instruction, I'd like to move items 1 through 4.
Second.
Ms. Caselda?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
Mr. Mislevich?
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees? Yes. Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
We move to finance and facilities. Chris? Moving here.
Yeah, I'd like to move items 1 through 41 with, which one was the amended one? 31?
31.
31 is amended.
Second.
Second.
Jennifer's second. I do want to mention that board members for whom there is an agenda motion, they need to abstain from their own motion. So that would mean Mr. Krieger and Ms. Bruce. So if you can just, yes, there's a motion for you to travel. You should not vote on it.
Okay.
Do you need me to find them for you?
No, got it.
They're there.
No, I understand.
Thank
I
you.
didn't know.
Everybody ready? Ms. Caselda?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes on all but number 35, which I abstain on.
Thank you. Ms. Bruce?
Yes, all but number
36.
36, which I abstain on that one.
Thank you. Mr. Ruslevich?
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
And then we move to personnel, and you want to move? Oh,
Yep, no, I'm here. I ran out of power.
Okay, there you are. Okay, let me see if I can.
I'd like to move numbers 1 through 35 with 25, 26, and 27 as amended.
Second.
Got how long?
A few minutes.
A few minutes.
Ms. Casaldo?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
Mr. Ruslevich?
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
And for policies,
Three.
number 1 and 2.
Second.
Ms. Casaldo?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
Mr. Ruslevich?
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Here we go to board liaison reports. Does anybody have something they wanted to share with us on these?
I just want to share that the Board of Health did meet, but I was away out of town. So I have a call set up. We should have a report next week.
Well, we're going to be here next week, so we'll take your
Yes,
report.
many weeks.
All right, go to work. Anybody else? Okay. I'm going to just take 2 minutes on the president's report. We're running late. I wanted to share with the public and with the board that Allison, Monique, Dr. Cozy, and I met with Pat Reese, who's our representative with New Jersey School Boards Association, to look ahead to that long-range planning that we're hoping to do next school year. So she explained to us, and I had shared with you sometime back in the email about the 3D model of strategic planning that we would like to undertake next year. It would involve 3 public meetings at which we would invite our public, staff, parents. We would reach out to community members and various religious organizations, businesses, anybody in town. We'd encourage them to join us if they can, so it's an open meeting that would be facilitated by the School Boards Association with a very set agenda and a plan and grouping, so people are put into groups to discuss and share their thoughts on different topics. The goal of this planning would be to come out with a consensus over the course of these 3 meetings with goals for our district schools. Those goals and objectives would then go to administration to create action plans and to us to create budget implications. Something that was done certainly more than 5 years ago here in a different format, but we're proposing that we do this 3D because it's a pretty streamlined plan for strategic long-range planning. The meetings would take place approximately, we would have dates set by the end of August. The first one would be about mid-October, second one might be early December, and this will all be set and sent out, and the third one would be early January. People could attend 1 or all 3, depending on, obviously, situations. They would be in the evening, an hour and a half, 2 hours, again, with a pretty set agenda. So we're looking towards doing that. Board of Ed members would be encouraged to attend, but we would be attending as participants, not as board members per se, but members of the community. Dr. Nicosia would start us off with the state of the schools, and then she too is taking a bit of a back seat in the process, listening, and I'm participating. The district would need to set up, do the room setup, do all the advertising, the contacting, and then again, school boards takes over with a good piece of the agendas and so forth. So it seemed like a very doable process. Just want to let everybody know that's coming. And hopefully the outcome will be, beneficial for our planning going forward. So this would happen during next school year, which means the next budgeting cycle, it could impact that, depending on what the outcomes are. Allison, Monique, did I miss something?
Just thinking about our conversation around support for families who parents may want to participate, either childcare. I think that was one of the things we talked about, making sure we can offer, as well as other sort of, whether it's food or translation services. So just making sure that we're really being comprehensive and strategic also about making sure we have a truly diverse representation of our community.
Yeah, that would definitely be our goal. Something we need to work on in September, and then again after the first meeting, we could, again try to pull people in if we didn't get what we wanted to, in terms of the cross section. So, anything else? Okay, so we look forward to that for next year, and now we're going to move to old business. Anybody have anything?
Can I just ask a question about?
Oh, absolutely, sure.
Will hybrid be an option for those meetings, or this is in person only?
I think it's in person only because you're really looking to do discussion between people.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure how that would work, hybrid wise.
What they did say is that after each meeting, they compile notes and presentation that we can disseminate to the community, so that if people can come to the next meeting,
or provide feedback,
they can do that as well. So that everybody is going to have the information that was discussed.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question, good point. Anything else on that or old business? No? New business? Okay, we'll go back to public comment. Same thing, Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Same board policy, same procedure, other than we don't have the 3-minute rule on this one. So if anyone would like to speak, anybody in the room? One, two.
Hi, I'm Ethan Schoolman, 433 North Harrison. I want to yield my time to see if anyone would like to respond to my earlier comments about the scores, and in particular the gap between the middle school and the high school and all that sort of thing.
I think what we share, what Dr. Nicosia shared, typically in public comment, we have taken the information, and then often Dr. Nicosia, I think, always responds to parents that way, but not specifically to those questions. What I believe our plan is, because we're only just, Dr. Nicosia, not me, are only just digesting these scores with her administration, so that by the middle of May, she's going to be making a presentation. Next meeting is the budget presentation. The one after that will be focused on these scores and others and plans going forward on those. So I don't think we're prepared to do that tonight.
Correct, but I think next week when we do present the budget, you're going to see plans for how that intervention is going to happen, or what we, would hope with the budget to achieve based on how we're staffing, programming, etc. So definitely attend the May 1st meeting where we do our initial budget.
And then the presentation 2 weeks later, middle of May meeting.
Marilyn, may I make a very brief comment?
Sure.
That's okay, thank you. So I've lived in Highland Park most of my adult life. I was on school boards in the 1980s, the 1990s, and for the last 7+ years. I've seen the DOE reports, so I'm not panicking or freaking out. I mean, I live here, I have a house here, my children went to school here. They went from kindergarten through graduating Highland Park High School. In 2017, I believe, the state put the high school in the middle of the pack as usual. A national organization, I think it was one of the big press organizations, rated all of the high schools in the state of New Jersey. Highland Park High School was number 17, that number stuck with me, out of 600+ high schools. The other 16 ahead of us, I think all of them were specialized high schools. They were charter schools that could take kids or not take kids. They were special science schools in large cities, perhaps Jersey City. And when you compare the DOE numbers, where we're in the middle of the pack, to someone who actually looks at the school, doesn't have some, pardon me, bureaucrat in Trenton coming out with some numbers that they got from wherever. You compare that to somebody who actually looks at the school and had a much more comprehensive report, I'll take a much more comprehensive report. And I've been in the schools. We go every year with the superintendent, and we walk around and we see what the culture is like in the schools. I mean, not that we're there, but as you said, you're very happy with your children's schooling. I would choose this for my children at this point, who would be my grandchildren. There are changes, the community has changed, but all in all, this is an excellent and fine school system. And I believe that Dr. Nicosia and the administration, once they go through the numbers, with the caveats they've been told by the Department of Education, will have a convincing set of rules, policies, goals to show the direction we're going, not to mention what we budgeted for next year, to try to make it even better.
20 seconds, and then I would certainly hope that's the case, and I hope I get to raise my kids through high school. That would be a great thing. I'm at Highland Park, I assume. But even if it turns out that these scores are not reflected in Highland Park, which I think in some respects they might be, though I think the gap is what really is concerning, because you think they would reflect the same way, and so the gap is still there between high school and middle school. But even if that's a case scenario, there's still an image problem. And there are things that there should be things that can be done to, even if it is for the sake of appearances, because it does affect who we can recruit in terms of teachers and attracting families. And we have, any storefronts in this town, it's going to be hard to fill them. We don't get families to come here and spend money.
We do take it all seriously. I mean, it is our goal that we have high achievement in our district, and equitable achievement. So obviously, it's something we keep working on what we're looking at.
I'll start. Can I just make a point of quick procedural order here with the public comment? So just to Ethan's point where he said he would yield his time to, and that's not necessary, right? I mean, the public comment time for public commenters is their time, regardless of whether or not we're speaking. I just wanted to be clear about that.
Correct. It's not the procedure that we typically follow, which we, right.
You don't have to yield.
You don't have to, I just wanted to be clear that you don't have to, I know you speak, but just to make it clear that, right, whether we're interjecting or not, that does not take away from the public commenters' time, and we typically do not. We typically sit back and listen and just let the language.
That's a process we follow.
At some point, you have to let other people talk.
No microphone politics.
I just have one question, since I have a little more time and I'm still here. So the middle school in particular, the score, I think, is the one that was shocked everyone because it is so low, and also seemed like somewhat of a precipitous drop. Typically, when you see things sort of come out of nowhere like that, you think maybe there's been some sort of reporting error or some sort of calculation error or something like that. I'm wondering if anything like that has been looked at and ruled out already, because that in particular, maybe we can talk about the reasons for the other schools, but the middle school, I mean, it looked like essentially a reporting error would result in a score like that. So I'm wondering if there has been effort to look at that and whether or not, I don't know if you have the resources or whether hiring a consultant or something like that, so we can figure out for real, like, what is the result of this, honestly, like, catastrophic score that doesn't make any sense to anybody and seems to be from out of nowhere. So to the extent that resources could be spent, or I don't know what capacity you all have to do it, I certainly can, I think that would be, in particular, a sort of low-hanging fruit thing to address quickly and right away, and certainly maybe stop the bleeding a bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could, Marilyn, can I interject real quick?
Please go to the microphone.
I'm sorry. No, that's fine. I don't have to do I just wanted to add that we did find a mistake like that in absentee rates at one point. We were dinged for chronic absenteeism in one of our schools. We went back and looked at it there, and there was a reporting error. So, in my opinion, I think it's great.
This
report.
No.
Your suggestion has proven true in the past, right? And I think it's a great idea this time around. If it hasn't been done, I don't know. No, it's awful.
I see no hands in the public, so I'm going to assume no one else has comments. And seeing none, I'm going to move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much to the public and to the board, and we'll see you next week.